Hey everyone, Valky here. Season 13, Oath Season, has officially kicked off, and today's video will be a list of compositions and teams you can learn and practice early in the season to get those free points, because I don't know about you guys, the frame this season is looking pretty good. And I hear through the grapevines, a lot of people, especially non-RTA players, are actually seriously thinking about picking up RTA this season for the frame. Now, if you're one of those new people, welcome. This video is for you. If you're someone who's around the community heavily, this video will be a continuation of that community post I put out towards the end of last season, giving you a slice of the best composition at each speed bracket, what core heroes and prebans are conducive to the success of each one of those compositions, as well as the players you want to be studying up to see how this style evolves throughout the course of a season. Of course, all relevant stats references will be put up on screen and links in the description, so you can find these in the Discord as well if you don't want to take notes. Now the formalities out the way, let's begin. So, kicking off the list will of course be my main playstyle, Aggro. This particular variant is derived from E7WC participant Big Boss. The main pre-ban and objective for this playstyle is centered around Bellion. The moment you ban Bellion, you can now abuse the best soul burns in the game. Your second pre-ban can be whoever you find frustrating to play against, which usually would be an RNG Bruiser. For me, that's Navy Captain Landy. Tough calls for me as well, since she's the best geared unit on my account. For others, I could see this easily also being MLU Fiend. Explore a bit for yourself, and there's no better way to explore your playstyle than to join a tournament that's always up in the community. More on that later in the video. Key units for this playstyle include, but aren't limited to, Lua, Spectre Tenebria, Angel of Light, and Briar Witch as your main core. The key here is to pick up this core early, suss out what your opponent's playing, and Laya is a new addition to this core and a very strong Lua and Knockwall counter, but she's also strong with Lua and Knockwall since she can just reset the cooldowns for these units, so they cycle back faster, they get more cooldown resets, and you keep delaying your opponent. And man, she's been out for a few days, and in my playtest, this unit has just been straight up unfair. I think no matter what though, Lua, Steny, and Briar Witch as a core has such a good matchup into most units in the game, and on top of that, they're great when you pivot, when you realize, hey, my opponent isn't just laying down and letting me step all over them, I have to take a pivot. That's when these units get even better. Now that you know the basics of this style, here's a couple of key pointers that really highlight the nuances of playing this way. Aggro right now is very dependent on your understanding of matchups. While yes, the core composition here is very aggressive, their biggest strength is that they can always be adapted. Sometimes opting out of aggro to slow down into a pace where your opponent can't sustain against you can be a pathway to an easy win. This composition is extremely weak to cleave. Aggro itself has historically been pretty weak versus cleave, which tends to use units that are just a little bit faster. So you can imagine if your opponent's just always a little bit faster than you, they always have an edge against you. And with the rise of ML Ludwig, blindly picking your units into a cleaver many times is just a death sentence. So try to read the pre-bans, look at what their first pick is, and at the first sight of a cleaver, run. As bad as Lua is into cleave, the Guiding Light at least helps her dodge the silence from the Zeo matchup, so there's always a little bit of room for counterplay as long as you choose your picks 3 through 5 very carefully. This style is particularly good if you have one fast set of gear. Here, this goes on the Lua. Lua is one of those units that, when built on your fastest set of gear, can absolutely take over a match and sometimes just makes a match unfair for the other player. Not just for her ability to reset the opponents, but to be able to set up speed buff for the rest of your team, which sometimes let your unit sneak up the turn order and just quietly cleave your opponent when it just doesn't look like you're a cleaver. As the name suggests, Soulburn Aggro also scales with the amount of Tagahel's ancient books you have, so this is not a super beginner-friendly playstyle, but when your account is like maybe a year and a half, 2 years in, you should be decently postured to play this because it doesn't require you to have crazy, insane speed gear. You just need to be a little bit fast. And the more Tagahel's Ancient books you have, the better. I'm currently running 11 copies, maxed out across various characters that I've collected over like 4 to 5 years. And the flexibility of finding a unit that your opponent can't deal with while abusing the soul burns is the crux of this composition. Now that we went over some of the basics and intermediate information, what you gotta do now is really just hit that find opponent button and really get a feel for the power of the units and the matchups for yourself. If you need additional reference materials, I highly recommend looking at the e7.gg pages for the following players, all of which are consistent top 100 finishers in their active seasons, and I'll be linking their e7.gg links down below. First up is Big Boss, the player that inspired this playstyle, and I mean, he played some meme sets during E7WC. Next up is YC Lin. He is a Taiwanese legend player and he's a streamer, so you can also watch his streams if you want to see any of this live. And I would say his particular strength is slowing down with aggressive openings. He opens the match very aggressively and then baits a pivot, or he baits his opponents to be defensive and then he forces a good pivot. That's generally how his matches go. And the last person on this list I would recommend is Elfmage, consistently one of the highest ranked streamers every season, and with multiple Hall of Fame finishes as well. His choice of his RNG Bruiser that he bans is Aiden, as opposed to like a Navy Captain Landy or something. And I would say he's a master when it comes to playing around Lua. So if that's what you want to learn, he is the person to watch. So standard now is like if standard and counter, right? The classic definition of these did a fusion dance, and now they're the same playstyle. So with units like Navy Captain Landy and Abyssal Euphine being so crap proof, right? Like they can withstand anything. Cooldown resets, they can withstand debuffs, right? All you really need to do is how to set up your opening picks so you win the support opening matchups, which is now super important, and you just let your RNG bruisers do their thing. Think about it this way. Navy Captain Landy and Abyssal Euphine are so strong, they have a set percentage chance of winning every match they're in, even able to overcome bad matchups sometimes, like hard counters, right? So your draft opening just needs to beat out your opponents to maximize this win percentage chance you have with these really OP bruisers. And before I yap your ears off about standard, because there's a whole lot to cover, I want to talk about practice. That's right, outside of end of season matches, which isn't until April, the only surefire way to get serious practice without risking your ladder points is to join a tournament, which I'm pleased to announce that we are officially sponsored by App Gallery EU Challengers Cup. This event will be hosted by myself, Car6, and my buddy Divine Shadow, with signups open to any player eligible to play RTA, to win various prizes like hundreds of dollars worth of Mystic Packs, Gear Packs, and even an exclusive frame for the winner. And just to be clear, just because it's in the name, this is not limited to EU. Everyone who is eligible for RTA can join the tournament for the rewards, and not just the winners, everyone. Just for joining, not only do you get these coupons that can cut down the cost of common purchases like monthly and burning passion packs, but you also get a chance to win absolutely for free anywhere from an 80% coupon, monthly packs, equipment packs. They're giving away over 10,000 euros worth of prizes for this event alone. I think playing or not, it doesn't hurt to join. And when you do join, make sure you put my name in the referral box shown on screen. This would help me a lot, and I would really appreciate it if you guys did that. You can tell them you're here to rep good old Uncle Valk. Don't let this chance go by. Join the Huawei App Gallery EU tournament now. If not for practice, at least for the loot. Anyway, back to the video. The prebans for this style is really flexible, and a lot of times it's dictated by personal preferences. I would definitely tailor them to your own experiences, your own units that you like to play, but the most common prebans that I've seen are two of the following. Zeo, which is to cut out the fastest unit in the game just to stop cleaver, since Zeo now combos so naturally into cleave. Lua Knockwall, still a terror to about 90% of the units in the game, especially when they get souls to burn. So you want to take them out. AOL Ray are just really strong because units that can strip buffs without attacking, meaning they can't miss and blind doesn't affect them, they've always been a little bit hard to deal with, and they're no exception now. These guys limit your potential of closing out drafts because a lot of times units like Remnant Violet or Urban Shadow Shu can close game out and just like do a 1v5 by themselves. These units are really buff reliant, and when guys like Ray or AOL can strip them without having to hit them, it sucks. Ray himself in particular is problematic because he also shuts down HP scaling units as well. So out of all of these, I recommend picking 2 out of any of these 5. Play around with these a little bit, see what works for you, and I think that's fairly important to figure out what works for you, and this is going to go a little differently for everybody. Now, the key with this playstyle is that it scales with unit pool. Standard now is more so than ever about reacting to your opponents, and the more options you have to be able to react with, the stronger your response can be. While it is a playstyle everybody starts with, it definitely goes much further, and as it would suggest, it also requires you, the player, to have the experience and knowledge to know how to use these units. And it's not just about, I have more stats. Yeah, stats are great, right? But when you pick it into a matchup, a high gear score, 500 gear score unit, kind of worthless. And another thing we mentioned earlier, it is so important to win the support matchup. If you know what that means, great, skip the next minute of this video. But if you are one of the newer RTA players, here is an example. 1. My opponent here picks up Spectre Tenebria because the moment Bellion is pre-banned, she becomes the de facto best unit in the game. My assumption is that they're going to use the Soul Burn on something OP like Lua or Knockwall, and instead of committing hard counters for either one of them, because then my opponent can just take the other unit, I commit a unit that counters both. Thankfully, Leia, who just came out, has an insane matchup versus both of these openers, plus Conqueror Lilius, who is just faster than both of these units. In my mind, I always play to base speed and just hope I don't get gear gapped, right? And that is how you should approach every single draft. As such, I not only have a slow solution for the Leia, but also the faster counter in the Conqueror Lilius makes this harder for them to draft around, right? Because you gotta factor in, do I want this guy to go fast, and do I want them to go slow? This is what we call a pincer because you're countering their unit on 2 fronts. It gives me an absolute advantage in the draft since I still have the precious hard counter last pick, which guarantees a force ban for me, if not outright win me the game if my opponent leaves this in. So that's how you really want to win your support matchups. And that's literally the only example you're getting from me for today. If I went over all of my experiences, this would quite literally be a 24-hour video, and I don't have the time to edit that. And you know what, even on top of that, 24-hour video can't cover everything. That's kind of the parts of the joys of playing RTA. The game goes really deep, and it's really up to you to kind of make that journey, find friends, and discuss and discover all of these matchups and intricacies. And it's kind of what makes the game fun. Another thing about this game is it requires you to have a really crazy good mental. Due to how some of these counter-attacking bruisers work now, they're very random, and good mental is almost a requirement to play this. Like, don't get me wrong, right? Landy Yufine are great units, but because they work off of a percentage-based chance to counter, sometimes you'll win game you rightfully deserve to lose, and lose game you think you can't lose, right? So it's going to mess you up sometimes. If you're playing pretty casually for a frame and you're the type of person to go, yep, okay, enough RTA for today, perfect. This will be more than enough. But if you're not that type of person and you really like to hit play again, you love grinding, you need to have a really good mental, or I would recommend playing a playstyle that commits to either fast or slow and don't rely on these RNG bruisers to win you the game. So part of why I held off on talking about the key units for this playstyle is I want everyone to understand what they're signing up for. Because yes, almost every man starts their RTA with standard, but you're also looking to scale this playstyle when your unit pool gets bigger and bigger. Everyone starts in standard, but that's not where everybody ends up. And I'll show you guys what I think right now, the time of writing, are the strongest unit in each role for this slot. In the DPS slot, you have Navy Captain Landy, Yufine, Aiden, and ML Shu. I think these are the best in slot early DPS units to be picking. They're the most bullet and BS proof. Add Spectre Tenebriate to that list, if you will. Just all really solid units all around. If you don't have all of them, don't worry. I think you only really need like 2 of them to hit champion rank. But if you want to push one of the top 1000 or top 100 ranks in Emperor and Legend, you're going to want a little bit more. The best tanks right now that are adaptable to all situations are Last Rider Crow, Arrowell, a good protection set Crimson Armin, and Ambitious Tywin for the debuff compositions. This is really self-explanatory. Last Rider Crow's got mitigation, he's got damage. Arrowell just mitigates the most amount of damage. Crimson Armin is here to protect versus buff strips on top of just having a passive that can grant more damage mitigation, which is good. And Ambitious Tywin has this flexibility factor to him where he's not only protecting you versus damage, but debuffs as well. And on top of that, he can set up for some crazy strong comebacks if you play on the slower side of standard. When it comes to supports, I think Green Luluka and Bunny Dominion right now are the premier supports. They have crazy good matchup versus a lot of the fast openers that's historically really dominated the RTA metagame, like the Conqueror Lilius, who is, by no means am I slandering her, still a strong unit. But now you also want to add Leia to the mix. She's the new support, and I think she kind of supplants Mediator Koerik, our beloved hand guy, as that, like, you know, I'm not very fast, but I'm going to pick this unit and hope nothing screws up my game plan. Those are the strongest supports right now. I don't think these units are must-haves, but I think if you're starting the game, starting RTA right now, you want to have at least 1 out of every single one of those categories. And over time, you want to move to make sure your account has at least 3 to 4 out of those units in any given meta. That's like a comfortable spot, I would say, to shoot for Emperor. And if you just have like, I don't know, 1 or 2 of them from each one of those slots, that's like an easy champion rank, as long as you have like maybe 6 months of gear under your account. Now, the players you want to be studying for this playstyle, number 1, AB. I think he's widely considered a top 3 player on global. Whenever the metagame changes, he's always the person I watch for reads on the new meta. He bans AOL and Zeo at the time of writing. So what this does is it takes out Zeo, which enables all the cleave units, and AOL, which generally slows the game down. So when you take out 1 fast unit and 1 slow unit, you create this like mid-range where being able to counterpick your opponents well is king. Second player I would like to highlight for this playstyle is Winter Witch. So I know whenever I bring up AB, there's gonna be people that go, but he got beat during FMWC. Okay, I get it. So here's the guy that beat him, right? I would say Winter Witch reminds me of YC Lin from the Aggro section of the guide, which is they both like to open up pretty aggressively and then slow it the fuck down whenever it benefits them to do so. Though he can definitely speed it back up when it can give him a win, so I say that's pretty good. And the third player here, I don't know if I can say this word on YouTube. I can't say this word on Twitch, but this guy's my guildmate. He's a really good example of how far you can push your account if you just build everything around 1 OP hero. And for him, it's Navy Captain Landy. And that limit is top 10, by the way. He does this like every season. He just spams Navy Captain Landy and he gets wins and he goes top 10. You think there's units that beat her, but it's really not that easy. So yeah, those are your 3 guys. You can find the link below. On to the next style. Alright, so a lot of times I get this comment, haha, your guides are cool, but you make it sound easy, but the gear's not relatable, everything's so fat. Yeah, if that's you, this section is kind of dedicated to you, so no problem, you're welcome, no need to thank me, it's just what I do. You're probably playing tank down if you can't relate to my level of speed gear at all. There's no speed involved, no risk, you don't need to flex your comp here. You just let your opponent take the first turn, and you flip it on them with an overwhelming amount of like HP, defense, ER, since you don't have to build speed. The key point here is you are giving up the biggest edge first turn in a competitive turn-based game as a trade-off for peace of mind. After the first turn, your opponent can only get weaker and weaker, and you get stronger and stronger. That is generally how this playstyle goes. And point number 2, I think this playstyle requires you to, if you don't have it now, work on this, get a protection set Crimson Armin. It's almost mandatory because she can be a blanket solution to any problems that 1 has to do with damage and 2 also covers versus Lua, because the extra barrier protects your immunity set, so when the Lua presses S3, all of your units only lose the barrier and you're good. You don't lose any cooldowns, so it saves you a pre-ban spot. And I do think on top of that, shoutouts to Crimson Armin's imprint, which gives you additional ER, and it covers things for your main support by just giving them more ER. Another thing is, when playing tank down, you have to get insanely good at your picks 4 through 5. Because of the way this draft is structured, you're normally picking up tanks and 2 supports on picks 1 through 3, which means you generally need to pick up units on 4 to 5 that are both DPS units, and 2, they both need to be big problems for your opponent. Since your opponent generally bans one of them, leaving the other one to solo carry a game. So if this is you, make sure this is something you get really, and I mean really, you want to be able to mess people up on picks 4 or 5. You want to get the picks 4 or 5, and you know you're going to be able to blow somebody out the water. Which also takes us into our next point. So unlike Standard, which can work with a whole suite of units, a lot of the counter picks in Tank Down are must-haves if you consider that on picks 4 and 5, these units, 1 has to be able to cover like multiple team archetypes, right? So for example, whenever you're playing against a counter-attack focused team, you kind of need Lionheart Sirmia. If you're playing against anti-crit, not having a Lone Crescent Bellona kind of hurts. And when your opponent is all single target damage, you need Spectre Tenebria and maybe like 1 or 2 Guiding Light units. So the common thread here is to figure out one way to get around every damage source your opponent can bring and then pincer them on picks 4 and 5. And you have to get really, and I emphasize, really good at doing that. And coming into pre-ban, since you're playing a slower playstyle, what you want to do is eliminate units that can go fast, and on top of that, they leave behind debuffs that make the board state unplayable to you. The 2 most common pre-bans for this playstyle that I've seen are Death Dealer Ray plus Briar Witch Iceria. Both units have a way to set up a board state that can just doom your entire board with debuffs that end the game. Sometimes I've also seen Angel of Light as one of the pre-bans, but like I said earlier, there's not a whole lot of flexibility in here. Test around what works for you, but Death Dealer Ray plus Briar Witch have definitely been the most common pre-bans I've seen. Key units here for tanks, you're really just playing Crimson Armin or Arowell if she's taken. Crimson Armin is just a little too good for the playstyle. She covers any type of damage, and on top of that, gives a little bit of ER as well. For your supports, Destina and May Chloe are what you really want to work with, because these are the 2 main units that stack so much effect resistance, they should feasibly not eat any debuffs ever. And as I mentioned earlier, this is not mandatory, but I would highly recommend, even if you are a slow player, get your fastest set on a unit that you constantly can get your hand on. Whether it's Conqueror Lilius, Naquo Lua as some of the main examples. The key point here is you want a way to be able to confuse your opponent and just throw in a mix-up. That's something that's super important in fighting games, and it's just as good here. You don't want to give too slow options for your opponents to be like, well, I can just soul burn my Naquo, right? You want to be able to throw in something fast to make it a little bit harder for them to decide. A Zeo can work as well if you really don't have speed gear and you just need to cheat out a first turn. Great solution. DPS gear here, your best needs to go on something like Navy Captain Landy or Abyssal Yufine. What a surprise! Whoa, it's these guys again. Lone Crescent Bellona, ML Ken, ML Shu, Aiden are all decently good units because they all check specific playstyles. And a lot of times you just need to spring 2 of them on 4-5 and it should just win you the game. I would say even if you only have 2 of these guys, you should be set as long as, you know, you're not missing something important like a good maybe Karina or Rem, right, for anti-cleave. And you definitely need to learn the bad matchups so you know when not to pick them. This is something that I usually group with the supports, but I think because more so than any other playstyle, Tank Down really love to slow down the game. So I'm going to give debuffers their own sections here. And a lot of times, as a tank down player, you got to sign a pact with the devil. And the devil here are Angel of Light and Solitaria. Get really good at learning what matchups make these units good, what types of games they slow down, because they will be the key in holding back a lot of standard players, because these units can just take away matchups just in a fell swoop sometimes, which standard is, as you guys know, what majority of the ladder plays. And the players here you want to study are, number 1, KHM. So ever since he started, I think KHM's been one of the people that have inspired players to look at and copy for tank down strategies. He was only like 7 months or something into the game when he hit his first legend finish. I mean, if it's any reference, it took me 3 years to get my first legend frame after I started playing the game, so that should tell you the level of knowledge he plays with. The other good player to study for the style, I would say, is Marguerite. He was the E7WC winner of 2023. His prebans are a little different than what you might expect, but he is very much a tank down player. His results in E7WC is a great example of what I mean when I say this is a low risk, medium reward playstyle, and it's one of the best and consistent ways to win games, especially during tournaments. Wink wink, nudge nudge. And I always learn something looking through his builds, like why he goes, for example, no immunity on his low Queen Charlotte just to take some risks. And knowing why he takes them and trying to think about that a lot of times is really... And that about wraps it up. So for the finishing thoughts, right? Usually on stream, on YouTube comments, and sometimes in the Discord, I get a lot of requests asking to update a lot of the older draft guides I made, and like the information on those is still good. The logic is good, you know, the team building logic is there, but I guess a lot of people just want to lead on how to kick off this playstyle. You know, 1, man, play the game yourself, you damn lazy. I'm just kidding. That's a bit mean, but come on, guys. I play the game a lot, so I guess here I'm sharing my experiences. This is all you're gonna get as an update, with air quotes, to the older style draft videos. If you want to know the basics of these playstyles I covered, definitely go back to those videos, which I'll link in the description as well. At the end of the day, just remember, RTA goes super deep, and sometimes way too deep. No content never really applies to RTA players. There's always more content and always more to learn. If you want to achieve good results, there's only so many shortcuts you can take before you just gotta sit down and smash that find opponent button. and learn the game through hard experience. I honestly, there's no replacement for that. You will just have to grind through it and learn if you want to be one of the top players. And yeah, that's it for this video. If you watched till this point, thank you very much, as always. If you found it helpful, I mean, you already know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe. Really helps the channel grow and put the video into the vast void that is the algorithm. I've recently seen an uptick of people coming into the Discord server from the beginner PvP guide, the shorts I do, which is cool. If you got to the server, you'll notice a lot of people are chatting, and sometimes people stream their matches, which you're more than welcome to watch, learn from, chat with them. But one thing I've been seeing is people just come in here and put a stream up and expect people to help them, which, you know, don't really expect people to help you if they don't know you already. You know, it's just sometimes people have jobs and a busy schedule, so if they don't know you, they might not be down to give you 2 hours of their free time just to help you. So yeah, get to know people, talk to people. People in the community are really cool. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I stayed in the community so long and decided to make videos. Talk to people, and I'm sure people will be more than happy to help you. I just see this a little too much, especially towards end of the season, where people neglected to play all season. They just throw up a stream and expect to get help. Like, if you've been one of those people, that's why. Get to know them, have fun. It's been great seeing the activity going on there recently. That is all. Take care, guys. Have a great one out there, wherever you are, and see ya.